Good morning, everyone. I'm Poppy Harlow.
I'm John Berman. Great to see you this morning. A stunning and confusing morning at the White House. This morning, we know that Michael Flynn is out as National Security Advisor. We know he talked about sanctions with the Russian ambassador during the transition. We know he then either lied about it, misled, or forgot to tell Mike Pence. All of that is big news just 25 days into the administration. But even bigger news might be what we do not know.
That's exactly right. Just to name a few things, we don't know if the president knew about the conversations with Russia when they happened. We don't know if or why the White House ignored an explicit warning that Russia could potentially blackmail its national security advisor. That warning came weeks ago. So what happened between then and last night when Flynn finally resigned? Let's begin this morning with our chief political correspondent, Dana Bash. She is in Washington. And Dana, there is so much. Good morning to you. There is so much to walk through this morning. Let's begin with all of the reporting you have on exactly how this all unraveled in the late hours last night.
Well, the headline from senior administration officials who I'm talking to is that they just realized, and the president finally realized, that the situation was untenable. And the situation that they describe as untenable was the idea that either the now former national security advisor didn't remember what he actually said in a conversation with the Russian ambassador, or he misled the vice president on purpose. And that either answer was not sustainable and was not okay for the president's national security advisor. And so that is why they said that it was time for Michael Flynn to go. But to give more context to that explanation, it's probably best for our viewers, because there's a lot to unpack, to go back in time. And let's do that right now. This whole thing started with December 29th, when the Obama administration announced sanctions to punish Russia for meddling in the election. Then on December 30th, surprisingly, Vladimir Putin said that there would be no response, which was very odd to most people who focus on Russia and how they react to things. Now, in late December, intelligence official turned up communications between Michael Flynn and the Russian ambassador. Then, fast forward to January 15th, this was the key when I was talking about the vice president being misinformed or misled. The vice president went on television and said that, as per his discussions with Michael Flynn, that Flynn didn't discuss anything having to do with the United States' decision to expel diplomats or impose a censure against Russia. So then the press secretary for the new administration, Sean Spicer, backed that up, said he spoke with Flynn also, and the topics included several things, not sanctions. Then fast forward to about 2 weeks ago, the Justice Department, then the acting Attorney General, Sally Yates, warned the White House that Flynn could be blackmailed by Russia based on the conversation that they had. And then February 8th, Flynn denied discussing sanctions with the Russian ambassador in a Washington Post interview. And if you then fast forward even more, Flynn aide told CNN that he couldn't then rule out if sanctions were discussed. So he started to backtrack on his discussions. Then the issue was starting this past weekend, guys, and the President of the United States being asked about a Washington Post report, which kind of blew this whole thing open, saying that Flynn did, in fact, discuss the sanctions, and that he probably did, knowing or not, mislead the vice president. And that's when we ended with the very late at night resignation last night by Michael Flynn.
You know, Dana, we're looking at that timeline, though, and there's, it's like Watergate, there's this 18-minute gap in the tape. There's this bizarre 2-week gap when the White House was told by Sally Yates, the acting Attorney General, that there was this conversation, that Mike Pence likely talked about sanctions and the Russians might blackmail. And that was at least 2 weeks ago. Has the White House given any explanation about what's gone on since those 2 weeks?
No. The answer is no. We don't know if the White House counsel, Don McGahn, who got that information, kept it from people, if he kept it intentionally from the president so he would have deniability, or if the president did know and decided that it wasn't enough of a problem to take Mike Flynn off of key and sensitive national security issues. I mean, he was in meetings with the National Security Council. He was in meetings on national security issues. He, of course, was involved in foreign visits and so forth, and not to mention phone calls that the president has made to foreign leaders. So that is a very important, one of many very important unknowns here with regard to what the White House knew about Flynn's actions and when they knew it.
All right, Dana, don't go anywhere. We have a lot more to discuss. Let's bring in JFKucinich. She's a CNN political analyst, Washington bureau chief of the Daily Beast. Errol Lewis, CNN political commentator, political anchor at Spectrum News. And David Rhodes, CNN global affairs analyst and national security investigations editor of Reuters. Errol, there's a lot to discuss, and let's try to break this down piece by piece. First of all, one key question is the conversation that General Flynn had with the Russian ambassador. Did President Trump, then President-elect Trump, know about it? One of the reasons we ask is, look on Twitter. On December 30th, President-elect Trump said, soon after Russia did not respond to the sanctions, President-elect Trump said, "Great move on delay. I always knew he was very smart." He's talking about Vladimir Putin. So is it plausible that President-elect Trump did not know the nature of these conversations at the time?
I always thought it was unbelievable in a literal sense. Like, I simply could not believe that the president wouldn't know about these things. When he said on the plane the other day, "Oh, I'm looking into it. I don't know anything about it." This is the best informed person in the world. This has the person who gets the intelligence briefings every day.
By the way, from Flynn.
Perhaps through Michael Flynn,
Michael Flynn.
Yeah, but I mean, that raises sort of Hollywood type questions. But Sally Yates, there are independent reporting lines right through the Department of Justice. There are independent reporting lines through the Central Intelligence Agency. There are people who can tell the president, at a minimum, this is a problem. There are political advisors whose job it is to do exactly that, find out what's floating around in the bureaucracy and bring it to the president's attention. So if he is uninformed, in some ways that might be more devastating. But this is somebody, a president who has, I think, always sort of played for time, always kind of left things a little bit fuzzy. As you say, the tweet shows that he was aware of the issue of whether or not Russia was going to respond to the sanctions. And clearly that is of immediate relevance to try and figure out who knew what when.
So let's listen to what the president said just on Friday. He was asked about this by reporters on Air Force One. Here's his answer.
I don't know about it. I haven't seen it. What report is that?
I haven't seen it. Reporting that he talked to the ambassador to Russia before you were inaugurated about sanctions, maybe trying to...
I haven't seen that. I'll look at that.
Okay, probably the biggest issue going on in the White House at the time. And then in the subsequent appearances before reporters, no one asked him about this situation. Shockingly, yesterday, some friendly media was called on. Dana went through the timeline for us. Jackie, to you, Don McGahn knew 2, if not 3 weeks ago about this. Is it plausible in your mind that it never made it to the desk of the president? Because Kellyanne Conway on multiple shows this morning, said, I just can't answer that question. That's not why I'm here.
I don't know that I can answer that question, Poppy. I mean, as Errol said, it does seem unbelievable. But, perhaps they were trying to shield him from this. We just don't know. But where you're going to hear about this the most in the next 24, 48 hours is Capitol Hill. Republicans are going to have to answer for this. Democrats are going to be crying for investigations. This is going to fuel a lot of their complaints that the Russia situation wasn't properly looked into. So that is going to be chief among many, many, many questions that lawmakers are not only going to have to try to answer today, but are going to have to try to dig into in the future.
Yeah, to Don McGahn, White House counsel, sit on this information for 2 weeks. Because if he didn't sit on it, then other people in the White House knew, and maybe they should have told the president.
Isn't that a problem too?
There's loads of problems. And then David Rhodes, there's the Russia problem.
Yeah,
right?
for Democrats, this is clearly a political opportunity. They can bring up this whole question about were there contacts between the Trump campaign and Russia. There's still an active investigation going into 3 other people beyond this. Carter Page, who is a Russia advisor, Stone, who was at least a supporter of Flynn's, and then Paul Manafort, the former campaign manager. So there's no proof of this, let's be fair here, but clearly the Democrats are going to bring this up, and this isn't what the president wants to be talking about 4 weeks into his presidency.
President Obama's Deputy National Security Advisor Ben Rhodes put it on Twitter this morning. I want to get your assessment on whether this is fair or not. When campaign chairman and the NSA both resign over Russia ties, there's more. Manafort and Flynn had nothing in common except Russia and Trump. David, what credence? Is that just politics, or is there something there?
I think it's politics, but there are active investigations going on into these three people by the FBI. John McCain has, raised this issue. He's not going to let the Russia issue die. And again, all American intelligence agencies agreed that the Russians intervened in this election to at least undermine it and at most, favor Donald Trump. And we have repeated contacts between Russia and supporters of Trump.
Dana, based on your reporting, what's going on right now in the White House this morning? Because we've seen Kellyanne Conway out there today saying she has no explanation or doesn't have an answer for what happened from 2 weeks ago when Don began.
She said the president has complete confidence.
And there's that too.
Like 12 hours ago.
So this morning, what are they trying to do? Do they have a strategy to move past this over the next several hours?
It's unclear. I mean, that's the honest answer. It's unclear. It seems to me that the first thing that they want to do, which is the first thing that they should do, is get a new national security advisor and hope that helps to change the narrative, helps to change the discussion into will this White House and will the very important National Security Council find somebody who will give leadership, and not just to that part of the White House, but to the president's foreign policy in general. But you have to imagine that they are understanding that these questions are going to come up. I mean, I've been asking them, haven't gotten any answers yet. The key one, did Don McGahn, the White House counsel, tell anybody? Did he tell everybody? And if so, and what happened with that information? I mean, those are key questions that you can bet that they are trying to figure out how to answer. And it is possible that because of frankly, the chaos within the White House, that people who should know the answers to these questions don't.
So let's just take a walk back in history, a little bit further than you took us, Dana, and let's just have everyone listen to what Michael Flynn said at the RNC, a huge supporter and very loyal to Trump throughout. Here's what he said about Hillary Clinton and national security issues, calling her careless.
She put our nation's security at extremely high risk with her careless use of a private email server.
Okay. Errol, let's set aside the irony of that statement for a moment and talk about whether or not you believe there is a national security risk that could have spanned at least those 3 weeks when Russia would have known that it had leverage over Michael Flynn.
Well, I mean, I think the definition of a risk is exactly that. When information goes missing, when clearly there's someone who could be compromised, when there's an obvious need to sort of close ranks and figure out what's going on and come clean with the public and within the administration, and none of those things seem to have happened. And again, the missing piece in all of this is why, when he's going to tweet about, Nordstrom's or Hollywood stars or the media or anything else, how is it that this president has never managed to criticize Russia or its leader? It really makes the whole thing sort of very fraught, and you start to wonder what is going on here and who's driving the ship and in what direction and for what reason.
Quickly, last point, JFKucinich. Remember, Michael Flynn was incredibly close to Donald Trump as a candidate, then president-elect and as president. It's hard to know where his foreign policy ends and President Trump's began. And when he was criticized, the president, for not taking the daily briefings during the transition, his excuse was that Michael Flynn is briefing me every day. So this is not someone there is much space, between these two men.
It's true, but loyalty only goes so far. And I do think the fact that he did lie to or misstate the facts at minimum to Vice President Mike Pence was his undoing. And Mike Pence went out and defended him. Mike Pence was reportedly very upset about this. You can't undermine the vice president like that when you're someone who's so critical in general, but also when you're someone who's so critical to an administration.
Yeah. All right, Dana Bash, great reporting as always. JFKucinich, Errol Lewis, David Rode, we appreciate it. Coming up for us.